Okay.
Jokes. Go ahead.
First one is, when should you buy a moon?
When should you buy a moon? I unmuted almost everybody. Malia, I can't seem to unmute you. If you want to unmute yourself, I don't know.
Twice.
Okay, Victoria, what'd you say, love?
When it's half price.
When it's half price?
Yes.
That's a good answer. Jet, what's the answer?
When it's new.
Oh, a new. That's a good one.
Okay, here's my other one.
Okay, all right, go ahead.
When are you like the moon?
When are you like the moon? Anybody have an answer? When are you like the moon?
I have an answer, but I don't think it's the correct one.
Go for it. I mean, it's okay. It's okay to be wrong. It's okay. Say it anyway.
I don't think it's very appropriate.
Okay, well then keep it to yourself. I appreciate that. Max, you're awesome. Okay, bud. Okay, anybody have the answer? Otherwise, should Jet give us the answer?
Jet.
All right, Jet, go ahead, bud.
When you're full.
When you're full, after dinner, you are full, you have a full moon. I like it. Jet, I'm glad that you brought up jokes. That's typically how we start our week, and you know that. And I found some good snake and lizard jokes, so I'm going to try them out on you guys. Okay?
Oh, yeah. On Sunday, I saw 3 red racers.
Ooh.
Nice.
Sweet. That's awesome. Okay. Ready? Let's see. Which one do I want to do? How do snakes weigh themselves? How do snakes weigh themselves?
Oh,
The scale.
Oh, with their scales. I heard Malia and I heard Victoria. Good job, girls. With their scales. Very good. Let's see. What did the snake, okay, ready? What did the snake put on the floor? Put on his floor, sorry. What did the snake put on his floor?
Snake oil?
rattles.
Rattles, not rattles, not snake oil. What'd you say, Jet?
A dead rat to eat.
No, that's not a good answer, I suppose. Anybody else? Aspen, you have a guess? Go ahead, Aspen. What did he put on his floor? One more time, baby.
Concrete.
Concrete. I'm going to tell you. He put reptiles.
Oh, that's a good one.
Reptiles on his floor. Yeah.
I've seen a snake, 2 snakes before, a bull snake and a rattlesnake, and the rattlesnake was sleeping.
Oh.
Real.
I've held a boa constrictor once at a reptile.
I've held 2 boa
place.
constrictors.
I have 2.
I held a boa constrictor.
Cool.
I've seen a few types of snakes before, because if you look at the zoo in a little special spot, you can see a lot of snakes.
Oh, that's true. I actually have 2 snakes. I have a boa and I have a bull snake. And both of them are in the room right next door to me. I know. I mean, they're in cages. They're not just on the floor in the room. That would be a little crazy, but no,
they're reptiles.
Yeah, yes. They're not laying on the reptiles. Don't worry. All right. And let's see. I had one more joke. Let me show you. Let me find it. We have just a couple more minutes and then we'll get started. What do lizards like to eat with their hamburgers? What do lizards like to eat with their hamburgers?
Bugs.
Oh, that's close. That's close, but think about it. What do you usually eat with your hamburgers?
French
Who said it? Somebody said French fries.
French fries.
Okay, so we have French fries and we have bugs. What can we do when we put them together?
Bug fries.
French flies.
Oh.
You see, flies from France taste much better than flies from the rest of the place, manufactured in China, but called from France.
French fries.
You are very, very right. Okay. All right, guys. So it is 11:05. We might still get a few friends that join us, but I am going to mute everybody, which is, I guess, I know most of you know that's what we do every week. We are muted, and if you need something, you can raise your hand like this, and I'll see you, and I can unmute you. Or you can type it in the chat box, okay? And if you type it in the chat box, then I know you need something, and we can help you, all right? And Miss Melissa is gonna take over, and if she needs any help, I'm here to help her, and she's got some really cool stuff to show you guys about snakes and lizards, okay? So we are going to mute everybody. All right, ready? Hi, guys, you're muted. Okay, now you can hear me, and I'm gonna unmute Melissa too. All right. There we go. It's all you, Miss Melissa.
All right. I'm gonna switch to share so you can look at my pretty slides instead of my stupid face. All right. You guys see that?
Yep.
Cool.
We're
All
good.
right. So we're gonna talk about snakes and lizards. And the first thing I want to tell you, snakes and lizards are reptiles. You guys probably know that already. So what is a reptile? And whichever is easier, if you want to put it in the chat, it might be easier just to unmute yourself and say it if you know what makes a reptile a reptile.
So they definitely can't unmute themselves, but I will unmute them.
Okay.
Saw Max raising his hand. Go ahead, Max.
Usually they're cold-blooded and lay eggs.
Usually. Yes.
Anybody? Aspen, you want to talk, baby? Go ahead, love.
They have scales
They have scales.
and they can't hear.
They can't hear as well. Some reptiles can't hear as well as we do, but they can hear a little bit. That was a good guess, though. I know that I've heard that a lot, too.
Okay, Victoria. Go ahead, love.
They have a good sense of smell.
They do. Almost all of them have a really good sense of smell.
Perfect. All right. Who else? Anybody else? Jet. Go ahead, bud.
I have a question. Can't most snakes see heat? Can't most snakes see heat?
That is a very good question. So it's not all snakes, but some snakes can. So pit vipers and rattlesnakes, like we have in New Mexico, they're a type of pit vipers. And also, if you've ever heard of water moccasins and cottonmouths and copperheads that are in the eastern United States, they're also pit vipers. So they can all kind of see heat, sort of like you've probably seen on TV where they show like hot things are red, so they can tell what's warmer. And they use that to find food and also to find places to hang out that aren't going to be too hot or too cold for them. Because like somebody mentioned, they're cold-blooded, which doesn't mean that they're cold. It means that they depend on their environment for their temperature. Like we maintain mammals a constant-ish body temperature. And one way you tell if you're sick is you stick a thermometer in your mouth or in your ear and you can read your temperature. And if it's too high, that means you're sick. Well, for reptiles, their temperature changes depending on their environment, and they don't like to be too hot or too cold. So they have to like move around to find places where they're at the temperature they like to be, which is actually a little bit cooler than us, but not that cold. And a lot of them do lay eggs, but not all of them. Some of them give birth to live babies, including garter snakes and rattlesnakes. And rattlesnakes actually take care of their babies too, which is pretty cool. They're like good little mommies. And there are also some boas and pythons that have heat sensing pits too. So it's not just venomous snakes that have those, but most snakes don't have them. They just rely on their regular eyes to find stuff. So yeah, those are all really good guesses. So thinking about all those things that we just talked about, what makes a reptile a reptile. So we're gonna play a game and I'm gonna show you some pictures and I'm gonna tell you what's in the picture. And then you guys get to guess if it's a reptile or if it's not a reptile. And if it's a reptile, you can just put a Y in the chat. And if it's not a reptile, you can put an N in the chat. All right, so I thought I'd start off with one that I think is easy. This is a lizard. This is a fence lizard from my backyard. And I actually can't see the chat.
That's okay. I'll narrate a little bit for you. You got
Okay.
yes. You got a yes from Jet, yes from Ella. You guys, I'll give you a little bit of time to find the chat. It's okay. It's our first.
Yeah.
Yep. Alexander Max says yes. Yes, 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 yes.
Yes, yes, yes.
All right. Everybody's given a couple more minutes till everybody finds that chat. And then from here on out, it should be good. Jet,
Cool.
I can see your yeses. You don't have to put 500 yeses, Jet. All right, go ahead. I think most everybody is saying yes. Yes.
Okay, cool. Well, we're going to do the answers at the end. But like I said, that one was pretty easy because I did mention it at the beginning. So now we have a toad. So my question is whether the toad is a reptile or not. But I did want to point out while he's up there, he's got these fuzzy little legs hanging out of his mouth. Those are tarantula legs. This was, yeah, the Sonoran desert toad that I found right after he had eaten a tarantula, which was not something I didn't know that tarantulas were eaten by toads. But Sonoran desert toads are big enough to eat tarantulas. So yeah, so more reptile, not a reptile.
We're seeing a lot of no's, a couple yeses.
Okay.
Yep, I think you could probably move on. We've got yeses and no's, yeses and no's.
All right.
We'll have to wait till the end. You guys are gonna have to be
Yep.
surprised.
All right. This is my cat Zuma. So reptile or not a reptile? Not
It's a
just
hard one, you guys. Take your
the
time.
cat. Yeah, you know,
Time.
don't rush it.
I think they're doing pretty good on this one. Definitely all no's.
All
And
right.
it's a very cute cat. Ella said that's a very cute cat. So
She is a very cute cat. If I was doing this at home, she'd probably be on the screen. So this is a box turtle that hangs out in my backyard once it starts raining in the summer. Her name's Martha. So are box turtles and other turtles reptiles or not reptiles?
we're getting 50-50. Yes, no, yes,
Ah.
no. Looks like you guys are gonna learn some things today.
Yeah.
That's good.
Right. This one I think is challenging. This is a salamander. I think it's a giant salamander, but I don't know. I took the picture a long time ago.
Again, 50-50. Yes, no,
Yeah.
yes, no.
All right. And I think this is the last one. So this is a Cooper's hawk.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, they were real common when I lived in Tucson, Arizona. We would get them just in our yard and around the neighborhood all the time. Like, they love cities, so now I don't have them at all. A reptile, not a reptile.
I think they did pretty good on this one.
Yeah, well, we'll see. This one's a little tricky too. All right, so little pictures are going to come in again. If it's a reptile, it's going to float up to the top where it says reptiles. Not a reptile, it's going to go on the bottom so you can see if you're right or not. All right, there's the lizard. You guys are right on that. That one's a reptile. Here comes the toad. Not a reptile. Toads are amphibians. There's my Zuma, also not a reptile. Cats are mammals like us. There's the turtle. Turtles are indeed considered reptiles, even though they're pretty distantly related to snakes and lizards, but they are still considered reptiles. There's that salamander. So in some parts of the United States where salamanders are more common than they are in New Mexico, they are called spring lizards because they kind of look like lizards, right? Like they've got a tail, they've got legs, like same body shape, but they are amphibians, not reptiles. So here's the tricky one, Cooper's hawk. So birds are actually reptiles. So this is like a little secret for you guys. Bird biologists don't like to admit this, but everyone knows about dinosaurs, right? And dinosaurs are reptiles. And birds descended from dinosaurs. They're really closely related to dinosaurs. And alligators and birds are more closely related to lizards and snakes than turtles are to lizards and snakes. So technically birds are reptiles. They're just also birds. So that was definitely like a trick question. Like adults don't usually get that right.
I
So
didn't get it right. Raise your hand if you got it wrong. Raise your hand if you got that one wrong. Oh, Malia, you're not raising your hand. Did you get it right? Did you get the bird wrong? The hawk, I got it wrong too. Yeah, I think almost all of us did.
Yeah, it's a tough one. And they're weird reptiles. They have feathers, right? Most reptiles don't. Although we're starting to learn that dinosaurs, a lot of them probably did have feathers too. They lay eggs, like a lot of reptiles do, but they're warm-blooded like us, unlike other reptiles that are alive today. We also scientists think that dinosaurs are probably warm-blooded too. And if you get a chance to, like if you have a friend with chickens, or if you have some binoculars and you can look at birds in your yard, check out their legs. Their legs are covered with scales that look just like, they look a lot like alligator scales, but they look pretty similar to lizard scales too. So that's something that they share with other reptiles.
And Melissa, if you have time today, give me like a 10-minute notice and I can run out and go grab a chicken real quick and you guys, I can show them.
Oh, cool. All right. Yeah, that probably would align well with like the last video, maybe the hiking one. All right. Okay, so I think, the birds was tricky, obviously, but otherwise I think amphibians are tricky because we kind of think of amphibians and reptiles as being really similar, especially something like a salamander that is shaped a lot like a lizard. But there are differences between reptiles and amphibians. A lot, but there's one that you can feel, like and even thinking about like what that salamander looked like compared to the lizard. And if you've held frogs and toads and salamanders, and it sounds like a lot of you guys have held snakes and probably some of you have held lizards too, what's the difference that you can feel between reptiles and amphibians?
I can usually feel that like like frogs or something, they're usually kind of like slippy, and snakes aren't. And salamanders are very slippy. They live in like streams and rivers.
Yep, that's exactly right. People talk about snakes being slimy, but as Jet said, they're not. They're smooth. If they're wet, they feel kind of slick, but it's not slimy, like especially salamanders. If you've ever held one, like there's sometimes just a gooey, smelly mess. And that's kind of what those look like. If you look close up on the lizard, you can see all those individual scales, which are dry. They're waterproof. So that enables reptiles to live in pretty dry places. So we have a lot more reptiles in New Mexico than we do amphibians. We do have some amphibians here. This is a leopard frog on the right, and you can see, he's also in water, but his skin is really shiny, and if you had him in your hand, he'd be very hard to hold on to. They're really hard to hold on to. They just like squirm right out because they're all slippery and slimy. And that's because most amphibians can breathe through their skin, and so they are more closely tied to water. So also, like Jet said, they tend to live near streams and rivers or in ponds and stuff. And again, like we live in New Mexico, you've probably seen toads in the desert. So this isn't true for all of them. We do have some toads that are pretty well adapted to dry places, but they tend to come out only during our warm, rainy season in the late summer because their skin can't withstand the dry conditions. So there's some other differences too, but that's kind of the main one and the easiest way to tell the difference between amphibians and reptiles, especially if it's something that you can see and hold. So, like I said, we have a ton of reptiles in New Mexico, 45 different kinds of lizards, and 54 different kinds of snakes. Now, unfortunately, there's a decent chunk of those that are threatened or endangered or in some sort of trouble. 10 lizards and 8 of those snakes. Some of them just listed at the state level, some of them, and obviously we can't go through all 100 of those animals or 99. So I'm just going to talk about a little bit more and show you some pictures of some ones that I think you're more likely to encounter in your backyard, or like if you go out on a hike, because these are the common ones.
Hey, Melissa,
Mhm.
can I interrupt you really quick?
Yeah.
So yeah, go ahead, give it to me. So I just figured it was quite appropriate that my kids were out in the backyard this morning
Oh, nice.
and they caught this cute little guy. And so
Awesome.
just like you were talking about, you know, it's obviously, I'm going to let you tell us. You probably know what kind of animal this is, Melissa, exactly.
Oh, well, it's a toad.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, you're in a different part of the state that I am, and toads are not my specialty.
Got it.
Is it a Great Plains toad? Is that what you have there?
I actually have no clue what kind of toad it is. I just know that it's a toad.
It's a bumpy
Unless
toad.
you're telling me, I
It
mean,
is a bumpy toad.
and usually toads are bumpy, correct?
Yes, they are often bumpy. Like that's, you know, there's that old tale about like you get warts from touching toads because they have bumpy skin. They're not warts like people have warts, but yeah, they do usually have bumpy skin.
Well, sorry to interrupt. I just felt like that
That's
was-
okay. That's cool.
He's a cute little guy. And
Did
they're
you guys get rain last night or this morning?
Well, we live right down by the river, and so we get them quite often. I don't have to
Okay.
get rain to have toads. We have them in our garden and all over our backyard.
Nice. That's awesome.
Okay,
I'm
sorry,
jealous.
I'll mute myself again.
That's okay. That was very cool. I think that was worth it. A real live toad. All right. Tree lizards. So tree lizards everywhere I've lived in Arizona, New Mexico. This is probably the most common lizard I see in my yard or when I go for hikes. They're little, they're everywhere. In the picture is a female, just because I had a nice close-up picture of a female. But the males can sometimes, I mean, the females are pretty too, but the males will often get like bright blue on their chin and their belly, or sometimes bright yellow and orange. They're really cool. They're small. They're like this big body with a tail that can be pretty long, like the one in the picture, but they also lose their tail to predation a lot too. They climb, and you'll find them everywhere on the side of the house or on rocks. Like literally you will find them anywhere. That was my old dog sleeping, and there's a tree lizard that's basking on her butt. Yes, Jet, did you have a question?
Actually, one time I saw a male and a female of those lizards hiding in a hole in a fence.
That's very cool. Yeah, and this is kind of the time of year when you'll see males and females together. I had not a tree lizard male and female that's been hanging out on my back patio, but one of the other ones I'm going to talk about, actually this group, which are spiny lizards. And this was kind of hard because I know you guys are kind of from all over, and I live in a pretty different place because I think most of you are probably in northern New Mexico around Albuquerque. So there's different species, but the picture on the top, that's a fence lizard, and they're a little bit bigger than tree lizards, but not much. And more central and southern New Mexico, you can get these really big kind of spiny lizards called Clark's spiny lizards, and they're like, that actually looks way bigger. They're more like this, like the length of my head, of a normal size human head. But they can be really big. And again, some of them get like bright blue and orange patterns on them. That picture on the bottom, those are Clark's spiny lizards. And that one in the front is a male. And you can maybe see that he's got bright blue chin because he's displaying to that female that's in back of him, kind of hanging out. And they're pretty shy. All of the different kinds of spiny lizards tend to be. So often, like if you're out hiking or in your yard, you might just hear some scurrying on the side of a tree. And that usually means it's a spiny lizard, because the tree lizards will often just sit there and let you like walk right up to them. And then the little ones, like the fence lizards, they tend to hang out on the ground or on like kind of small rocks. So like a foot off the ground, and that's it. And those are the kinds, the fence lizards, that I've had a pair that have been hanging out under my solar oven for some reason on the back porch. So I'm gonna play a video for you guys now. And this is, because it doesn't say till the end of the video for some reason, but this is 2 different species of spiny lizards that I have in my yard. The one on top, her name is Java. She's a Clark spiny lizard. She's really, really big. We call her like the big mama of our yard because she's the only adult we saw for a long time, and she has a lot of babies that we see hanging around every year. And then the smaller guy, his name is Beto, and he is a crevice spiny lizard. And they usually live in little social groups, although we occasionally have them hanging out by themselves in our yard. But this is just a video that we filmed of them taking advantage of this really cool thing that ants do, and I'll just let you watch it. Could you hear the music? No? Oh no, okay. Well then the gopher snake video isn't gonna work. I wonder why.
Did you mute yourself when you played that?
I did, I didn't.
I can try to play the second video from my side if you want to
Okay.
tell me when.
Yeah,
And I guess
yeah, because that was, yeah, shoot. All right. Yeah, I'll let you know when.
Oh, I know why. Because you have headphones on. Are you playing? Because we figured this out a long time ago. Those of the kids that have been on this class with me a while ago, is I tried to play a video too, and then I muted myself so they couldn't like hear any background noise. But when I muted myself, they couldn't hear the video either. And it's probably because it's playing in your headphones that they can't actually physically hear.
Yeah, and I think there is something to default to the computer audio, but I don't even know if that is something I can.
But I can play the second one if you want. You just let me know.
Okay, all right. Yeah, we'll probably do that.
Oh, hold on. Teresa. Go ahead, Teresa.
Hi, we're wondering if the ornate tree lizard is the same as the sagebrush lizards that we see around here, because we caught them and they have the little blue throat and sides.
So sagebrush are actually like, I sort of like lump them all together as fence lizards because they're spiny lizards. A lot of lizards get those bright blue bellies or orange or yellow. It's pretty common, especially for the males. So a sagebrush lizard is in this group of spiny lizards. They're all the same, well, not even family, like smaller than that. But yeah, I think that's the kind that you guys have up there. Down here, the ones we have are fence lizards.
Okay, cool.
Size to tree lizards. All right, yeah, maybe I'll just take up. I'll take out my headphones and we'll see if that works.
Yeah.
All right. So whiptail lizards are another one. Has anybody seen any of these running around their yard? They're really fast. They're always on the ground. They usually have bright yellow stripes, like the one on top, and then the babies often have those blue tails. Yeah, so there's some hands. They're pretty common. They're like very difficult to catch. When I was like working as a scientist, or we had to like catch and count all the lizards, I mean, these are just impossible. So even for the professionals, I have gotten to train a couple whiptail lizards to like come and take mealworms out of my hand or from the ground right in front of me. So they're pretty smart, and they will figure out, and the other lizards too, actually, both of the spiny lizards in that video did that, and a bunch of tree lizards too, will learn to take food from you, which is, you know, not something you should do with wildlife in general, but lizards are pretty harmless. But yeah, they're really fast. They tend to run away as soon as you see them, but and there's a ton of different kinds. There are so many species of whiptail lizards in New Mexico, and they're very hard to tell apart, a lot of the different species. And here's another like super cool fact. Some species of whiptails, they are all females. And some, like, they are all clones of each other too. So like Star Wars, like Attack of the Clones, like they're all exactly identical, like even more so than identical twins. So that's really weird for an animal to only have females and to all be clones, but there's some species of whiptail lizards that are like that. They're really interesting little buddies. They're just sometimes hard to see and look at because they're so fast. So this is, man, if you have some of these in your backyard, like, you're lucky. I actually got to see a couple days ago, my neighbors had one in their yard. We've only ever had one in our yard. These are horned lizards, and horned lizards are really cool. How many of you guys have seen a horned lizard just somewhere, like out hiking or wherever? Yeah, they're really neat, right? And it's, you know, they're kind of hard to mix up with other lizards. They've got these round bodies that are kind of more turtle shaped than lizard shaped. And they've got horns on their heads. Most of the ones in New Mexico don't have super prominent horns. Like there were some in southern Arizona that we had that had like these giant spikes that really looked painful. And I've actually seen people have found snakes that died because they tried to swallow a horned lizard and those spikes like pierced out, like poked them through the back of the neck. I know, which is terrible because like everybody ends up dying in that scenario. But a lot of times if there's a predator that's confronting a horned lizard, like they'll bend their head down like this and they'll stick those horns up so that they can warn them like, hey, you might not want to bite me because it's going to be very painful for you.
I have a question. Is that, I mean, it's the same as a horny toad? Like some people call it a horny toad? Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
Very good question. Yes. They are sometimes called horny toads, but they're not toads. And I think, again, that's because their bodies sort of look like toads because they're kind of round, like toads, turtles, not like lizards. But they're reptiles. They have scales. You can probably see in the bottom picture, close-up of that head. And they live in very dry places. So yeah, definitely not a toad. But horny toads are same thing, horned lizards.
And it looks like Max has a question too, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
All right, go for it, Max.
On the topic of toads, if you still have that one you're showing, I might be able to identify it.
Okay, well, the
Cool.
kids took it back outside, so maybe at the end of class I can bring it back in and you can look at it a little bit closer, okay?
Cool. Nice. Oh, and so the other cool thing, I mean, there's lots of cool things about horned lizards, but something that, if you've heard anything about them, besides they eat ants, the thing you've probably heard of horned lizards, and maybe you've seen a video of it, which I do not have, is that when they're scared, they will shoot blood out of their eyes. And that is amazing. And it doesn't hurt them. It's probably not good. Like I wouldn't recommend going around and picking up horned lizards to try to make them squirt blood, because it means they're very stressed and they are losing some water, which is important for animals in dry places to not lose water. But it is a really neat thing to see, and it's especially effective against mammals, especially when it's some sort of dog-like predator, so like a coyote. And in fact, the only times I've had horned lizards that I've caught squirt blood out of their eyes is when I've had our dog with us and they could smell the dog on my hand, or if she was nearby when I caught them, then that pretty much makes them squirt every time, but most of the time not. So they're pretty neat lizards, not common in backyards, but they're cool. If you have them, like, I'm jealous because they're neat. All right, let's talk about some snakes because they're my favorite. They're just, you don't get to see them as much in your yard as lizards. So I kind of make do with lizards. But probably the most common snake where you guys are, and certainly where I am, are gopher snakes, which are also known as bull snakes in some places. It's the same animal. They can get really big, like 3 foot, 4 foot, 5 foot. I don't have enough room to show you how big with my hands, but they get to be giant. They mostly eat mammals, although they will eat birds and eggs and reptiles a little bit. And they're harmless, but they do like to pretend to be scary. So I'm going to take my headphones off and see if the video plays that way. And if it doesn't, then Miss Sarah will figure it out for me. So is there any sound on that? Yay. So that is a gopher snake trying very hard to sound very scary. Nice. Okay, well, good. I'm glad that worked. And so if you could still kind of hear me, then I'll just leave the headphones off. Probably be easier. And hopefully there's not too much background noise from the road. Yeah, so that, you know, they like, much like the blood squirting in horned lizards, horny toads, that hissing is something they do when they're really scared. It doesn't mean they're like angry or they're getting ready to bite. They're just trying to make you scared of them. Because a lot of people think that that sounds like a rattlesnake, that hissing. Even though rattlesnakes actually rarely hiss. So another snake that you might get in your backyard. How are there lines on the screen? That's weird. Anyway.
That would be one of our children because your annotate isn't turned off. Guys, don't mess with the screen. You're
nice.
causing Miss Melissa to get all confused. Don't do it. Okay.
That was a pretty good job drawing the garter snake though.
Yeah, they're funny, these kids.
Yeah, that was cool.
All the time.
Yeah, so garter snakes, where I grew up in the southeastern US, this was our backyard snake, kind of like gopher snakes and bull snakes are here. And in Silver City, the town that I live near in southwestern New Mexico, people get garter snakes in their yard a lot too, especially blackneck garter snakes, which is the one on the bottom. And I think you have blackneck garter snakes in your area too, as well as terrestrial garter snakes, which is the one up top. And that snake actually was in my yard here. Garter snakes are pretty small, like usually less than 2 feet, 1 to 2 feet for adults. They're harmless. They eat, they're little snakes, so they usually eat little stuff like invertebrates and frogs and tadpoles. Although the picture of the one on the bottom, that snake had eaten probably a chipmunk. We have no idea how he managed to catch that, but feeling him, that food item was so big, like you could see the outline of him, and there's just nothing else in our yard except for that lizard Java that was that big, and Java was fine, like we saw her right after that, which is kind of weird. They're often found near water. They're good swimmers. They like to hunt things that live near water, but not always. Jet, did you have a question?
Go ahead, Jet.
Why do snakes have that like their tongue that's like at the end it's like split? Why do snakes have that?
That is a very good question. So I will point out that you don't get to see it as often because they use it in a very different way. But whiptail lizards have a forked tongue as well, just like snakes. And they probably use it for the same reason, which is this. So snakes are a type of reptile that has very good sense of smell. That is primarily what they use to find food, to find each other, to find places to hang out. And that's kind of like our eyes are to us, that's primarily what we use to feel out the world. So they use their sense of smell. So that forked tongue does a couple things for them. So the outside of the tongue is where they can sense things. So they have more space when they have a forked tongue than if they just had like one single. So they've got twice as much room. Also, if something smells stronger on one side of the fork versus the other, they actually know that means that whatever that they're smelling is closer. So if the left side of their tongue really smells like, so I'm a garter snake and I like frogs, and on the left side of my tongue, it smells way stronger of frogs than on the right side, then I know I need to crawl to the left to find those frogs, which is like, I mean, I'm doing good if I can tell what smells are happening anywhere, but like trying to pin down to a direction, but snakes can totally do that. And whip-tailed lizards and the other lizards that have forked tongues can too. So yeah.
Great question, Jet.
Yeah.
And Ella has a question too, Melissa, before you move on.
Okay.
Ella, I can't unmute you, babe. You're gonna have to unmute yourself. There you go.
Do garter snakes eat little like mice and stuff too?
That's a very good question. So before last summer, I would have said no, because I've always thought of them as eating primarily little things. I mean, they're not very strong. Like gopher snakes and bull snakes constrict like boa constrictors do, so they squeeze their food to death. And venomous snakes have venom that they use to take down big food items. And garter snakes don't have either of those things. So they usually depend on just eating small stuff. But that snake on the bottom, that black-necked garter snake, he definitely ate a little chipmunk. So they can. And what we were guessing actually might have happened with that snake is right after we found, like the same day we found that snake, we found a couple small rattlesnakes in our yard. And we think maybe that one of the rattlesnakes actually killed that chipmunk, but the garter snake found him first. Because oftentimes when rattlesnakes strike their food, they bite them and they inject venom, and then they let them go, and the food runs off. And then they use their forked tongue and that sense of smell to figure out where it went. And it takes them a long time to do that, like sometimes hours. And maybe that garter snake just happened to find the chipmunk first, because I don't know how else he could have taken. I mean, chipmunks are pretty feisty, and that was not a big snake. That snake's only not very long, pretty small.
Melissa, I think we have one more question. Okay. And Cynthia, is that your kid?
Levi, yeah.
Levi.
You want to ask about bull snakes biting?
Do bull snakes bite?
Oh, yes. Bull snakes bite, garter snakes bite. We all bite, right? Like that's how we eat.
Would it hurt you if it bit you?
It doesn't feel great. So they're not venomous, but because they can be very large, what I always recommend is I don't spend a lot of time trying to teach people how to tell the difference between venomous snakes and not venomous snakes, so you'll know which ones to pick up. I recommend that you do not pick up snakes. None of them like it. I didn't bring this up yet, but I wrote on the garter snakes slide that, if you pick up a garter snake, you will usually get pooped on, and it smells terrible.
Ew.
Yeah, totally. And there was a place I worked where we were studying garter snakes, and there was one that ate slugs. Like that was all that kind of garter snake ate. They smelled, I've never smelled anything like this before. You would pick pick them up and they would poop on you and then they would bite you and then they would like smear their poop. I mean, it was just, why do you want to pick somebody up like that?
Don't do that. That does not
Eater when
sound
you
like a great
just
idea.
leave them alone.
Thank you for the question, Eli, though. That was a good, or Levi, not Eli, sorry. That was a
Yeah.
good question.
It is a good question. But yeah, they all have teeth, and their teeth, it depends on the species a little bit, but generally they're made to, hold on to something. So if their hand is what your hand is what they are holding on to, and you try to pull it away, their teeth are kind of shaped like this, like a cat's claw. So, well, usually you end up with a handful of teeth. Like that's happened to me a couple times when I've like jerked my hand back from somebody who's bit me, and then I just have a handful of bull snake teeth, which is not fun for anybody. Sure, it doesn't feel good for the snake either.
We have a few more questions, which is great. Unless you want to move forward, or do you want to answer questions now?
Yeah, we can do questions.
Okay. So Ella's got one more question. Go ahead, Ella.
So I used to live in Florida, and there was gardener snakes there, right? Because one time we saw a snake in our backyard, and my dad said it was a gardener snake, and it was green.
Yeah, so they are really pretty. So garden, and garter snakes are all the same thing. So the scientist word for it is garter snakes. But when I grew up, we always called them gardener snakes too. It must be a Southeast
Me
US
too.
thing.
In North Carolina, we had them too, and we called them the same thing. Good
And there was also tortoises always in our backyard there.
That's nice, because those are pretty rare there. So that's really cool. You guys must have had an awesome backyard.
Thank you for sharing, Ella.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Aspen and then Jet. Aspen, go ahead, bud.
I never touched a snake before, but I have felt a dead snake.
Oh.
Oh, well, I mean, that's...
And I also saw a snapping turtle. But Sarah, did you forget to bring your chickens?
No, not yet. I think we're not there yet. I will go get a chicken, I promise. That way you can see its scales on its legs. Don't worry.
Getting very close. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing, Aspen.
Yeah, that's sad that you only got to see a dead one, but I mean, unless it was like really dead, it does feel pretty much the same as live ones. Smooth and not slimy. You know, different species feel a little different, but mostly smooth.
Jet, did you have one more question?
Yeah, but I forgot it.
Oh, okay. Well, if you remember, you can ask again later, okay?
Okay.
Okay. All right, go ahead, Melissa.
All right. Okay. So now I'm getting ready to play the next video. So maybe.
So I'm going to disappear. I'll go get a chicken for you guys.
All right. And then it'll be chicken time. So, I thought, it's not as likely that you'll see snakes in your backyard as lizards, although you might, depending on where you live. But it's pretty common in New Mexico when you're out hiking to run across a snake. And because we have a lot of rattlesnakes in New Mexico, it might be a rattlesnake. And that is a question that I get asked a lot, is like, what do you do if you're out hiking and you come across a snake? So we made this video, and I actually got one of my nieces and nephews to star in this to show you guys what you should do if you come across a snake while you're out hiking. So I'm gonna go ahead and play this.
I just caught the very end of that video, and I'm gonna have to go back and watch because it looked adorable. Like so cool.
They did a really good job. So you guys learn about what you should not do if you see a snake in the trail.
I'm gonna actually just raise your hand and I'll unmute you. What should you not do if you see a snake on a trail? All right, Max, you go first, and then Malia, you're next.
Not try to harass it or whack it with something.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
When they did that, in their dream.
All right, Malia, go ahead, love.
Don't mess with it, or like don't make it mad.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, we're gonna respect our wildlife. Very good. Aspen, go ahead, bud.
Don't stomp on it or jump on it or kick it or pick it up or throw it.
Yep.
Just walk around it.
Yep, that's right. Yeah, so when they walked
One
around,
time my dog was sniffing a snake sleeping.
Oh.
I'm surprised that didn't wake up the dog, but I mean, snakes sleep too. Yeah, so when they walked around the snake, like, what happened? Like, did anything bad happen?
No, and also I have one more moon joke that I want to say.
Okay, nope, save it to the end. Save it to the end.
Okay.
You'll have time at the end, I promise, okay?
Yeah.
Okay, anybody else have anything to share? Otherwise, Melissa, you'd let me know when you're ready and I'll...
Yeah, I mean, this is it. It's just the activity thing, and that's it.
Okay.
So that's some chicken legs for us.
It's true. Well, let me show you his head first, because she's just like the cutest little chicken ever. Look at her big fluffy hair. She's a Polish hen, and she's about 3 months old, and she's got big fluffy feathers on her head. Okay, I'm gonna unmute you guys. I'm gonna unmute everybody. That way you guys can ask questions as we move forward. Okay.
Do you have a toad?
Whoa. Oh, okay. What is that? I'm gonna get close up to my computer. Hopefully she doesn't decide now is, hold on really quick. Hopefully she doesn't decide now is time to go to the bathroom. But let's look at, do you see her leg?
That's where they're.
Do you see, what does it look like?
A snake.
It kind of does, doesn't it?
Scales.
Yeah, it looks like scales. You're right, just like Miss Melissa was saying, that it looks like it has scales on its legs, and they do. And we have to watch, as chicken owners, we watch those scales because sometimes they can get little bugs that like to live in their scales, so we have to take care of them and make sure that their legs aren't hurting. And that they don't get any mites or fleas inside their little scales, because it makes them really uncomfortable. But they do. I mean, we can easily see. You can see on both of the legs actually that it looks like scales.
Do
you have the toad so I can identify the toad?
I don't have dude, I only got 2 hands. I'm holding
You don't have the chicken and the toad?
No. So anyways, I'll go put the chicken back. And you know what, Max, what I think I'll do for the toad is I will take some good pictures for you, because I think we released him in the yard, but I'll send the kids on an adventure to go find him again, and we'll get some good pictures. I'll put him on the Nature Ninos for you. So you have to go tell mom or dad to go on our Facebook page and go look at the pictures, and then you can type on there and tell me what you think it is. Does that seem fair? Okay, because I think right now trying to go find it might take us a little bit to get the chicken back on, or to get the toad back on, back onto Zoom. Okay. Does anybody have any questions about the chicken? No questions. Go ahead, Jet. Go ahead, Jet.
Why do like chickens and like pigeons, when you move their body, their head stays in the same place?
Ooh.
I actually don't know. That's a really good question. I don't know if there's any parent on the call that knows the answer to that. Go ahead and share, but I actually don't know. That's a good question, and it does look really funny when you do it.
Yeah, when I used to work with birds of prey like hawks and owls, we talked about how that helped them as predators. Like if they were up in a tree and it was really windy and the tree was moving around, just like that, they can keep their heads still so they could focus on food, which is especially important for a hunter to be able to keep their eye in one place. Because yeah, we used to do that with them. We would, have them on our arms and like do these wild circles, and the owl's head is just right there. So I guess it's useful for
Probably
other
similar.
birds too.
Yeah.
And they have a lot more vertebra in their necks than we do, that's how they move their heads so much. Yeah. Than other birds.
Any other questions about the chicken before I go put him back? Go ahead, Aspen.
The feathers look like big birds.
They don't they look so funny? When they were really tiny, we got them when they were babies, and they didn't have those feathers yet. And then as they started growing up, those feathers just got bigger and bigger. And yeah, she's a pretty cute little hen. We got 4 of them like that this year.
Why are baby chickens, like, why do they have like gray feathers, but like grown-up chickens have like white?
Well, not all grown-up chickens have white feathers. If I could take you out to my coop right now, I have chickens of all shapes and sizes. But the chicks are usually born with feathers that they don't stay around forever. They grow their like big chicken feathers is what we like to call them. And those are the chickens or the feathers that they'll have. That chicken just decided it was time to go to the bathroom on me. So I hope you guys know how much I love you because I'm letting a chicken do its business on me.
Did it go on the bathroom on you?
Yes, it did, Aspen. Is that funny? That'll make the class, right? Yeah, yum.
That's why I work with other reptiles now.
Yeah, not the birds, not the poultry guys. Yeah.
They do that too much.
Yeah.
I have
Okay, guys.
a story about a snake.
Oh, okay. So I'm gonna mute myself. I am gonna go put my chicken back, but Miss Melissa, you feel free to end the class if I'm not back by the time you guys are done with questions. Okay.
I still got my moon joke.
Oh yeah, make sure he can tell his moon joke too.
Okay.
I also have a story.
Make sure I can tell my flamenco joke.
Okay. I think Ella asked first.
Okay.
Tell a story.
So one time when my mom was little, she was hiking or camping, and she stepped right over a rattlesnake where the rattlesnake was below her, and she was just stood still instead of like walking off, because she just stood still because it was right below her. And then someone carried her off.
So the snake didn't do anything, like she didn't get bit or anything.
No.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, people do occasionally get bit from stepping too close, but honestly, like most people get bit because they're doing what the little boy in the video did, and they're messing with the snake. Like they just want to leave us alone because we're way too big to eat. So and we're dangerous and scary because we're giant. It would be like a tree coming at you.
They just do the bites because they're afraid and they want to be it's safe, so they just do the bites for that.
Yep.
Rattlesnakes don't actually like biting things too much because they lose their fangs after it.
Yes, they do not. They don't always lose their fangs when they bite, but they can. But what rattlesnakes do almost always lose when they bite is some venom. And there's only a certain amount that they have, and they have to have that to eat. And so they don't want to waste it on a big dumb human because then they might miss out on a meal. So yeah, that's a very good point.
Don't snakes, after they lose their fangs, don't they regrow them? And sometimes they can have like 2 fangs on one side and then like another fang on just one fang on the other, like 3 whole fangs or something like that.
So yes and no. So I think, and I'm not a shark biologist, but I think so sharks are constantly losing and replacing teeth. And so they do have there's another row of teeth coming in behind the ones that they're using. So snakes will grow teeth when they lose them, but it usually takes time. Like it can take, weeks or maybe even longer, probably depends on the time of year. So it would be weird for a snake to have 2 in his mouth at the same, 2 on one side at the same time. And that would probably mean his body's confused about something. So usually they only have the 2 things in front.
One time I was watching a nature YouTuber called Coyote Peterson. He does a lot of like nature stuff, and he found this rattlesnake that had 2 fangs on this side and 2 fangs on the other side. So it was like 4 fangs.
Yeah, so that's a weird thing. That's not.
I'm pretty sure it's a really rare thing to happen.
Yeah, they don't usually do that. I mean, of course, the flip side of that is don't know, I guess, how common it is. Like their bodies aren't supposed to work like that, but I don't know how rare it is because since it's a dangerous thing for me to open the mouth of a rattlesnake, and also it's unkind because it's very scary for the snakes. Like that is not something I have ever done to a snake that's alive and awake. I guess I have looked in the mouth of a snake who's asleep when I'm doing surgery to make sure he's still breathing. But in general, I don't open their mouths because, I mean, I wouldn't want somebody opening my mouth. Like that sounds terrible. Yeah. So, are there more questions? You're still muted, Sarah.
I think we do have a couple more questions, but I'm going to go ahead and use this opportunity to I'm going to unmute everybody again and have everybody thank Miss Melissa for coming today and sharing. And if you want to stay after to ask additional questions, you can. Otherwise, we're going to end class because we typically end at 12 o'clock. But if you have questions, you don't have to leave, okay? So ready, 1, 2, 3. I'm going to unmute everybody and make sure you thank Miss Melissa for coming today, okay?
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for coming. And if you're going to leave, thank you guys for coming to our Nature Ninos classes Tuesday, and we'll see you next week too. And next week we're going to teach about pollinators.
Jet still has his moon joke.
And butterflies?
Okay, stay after for the joke, okay? Everybody else, if you want to leave, you can leave, okay? Class is over, but if you want to stay, you can stay, okay? Say thank you, Miss Melissa.
Okay,
Hold, no, wait, Jet. Hold on. All right, go for it, Jet.
okay, here's my other moon joke. What do you eat sometimes that involves a moon?
A moon pie?
Mm-mm.
No. Oh, hold on. Ella, let's see. I'll unmute everybody because now we hardly have anybody on here. All right, go ahead. Does anybody know what you eat sometimes that involves a moon?
Cabbage moon.
Go ahead, Jet. What is it?
A croissant.
Oh.
Moon, croissant.
Yes, I see. You are a clever young man. Okay, does anybody else have any more questions for Miss Melissa?
Jet, do you want to do your bird joke?
I did that last week.
Oh yeah.
Oh, you did?
Repeat jokes. You got to come up with new material every time. Okay. So I think we're all going to say bye to Miss Melissa. We're going to hang out for the week. We'll see you guys next Tuesday. Okay.
Bye.
Bye guys. See you later.
Guys, thank you.
Have a good rest of your day. Thanks, Melissa.
Bye.
Now I can see.